Rich, what have you thought of Andor as a show so far? And then what do you think of episode 8?
It's funny. It's taken me longer, I feel like, than a lot of people to really get into Andor. I haven't disliked it at all, but it's taken me a while to kind of figure out like what's making it so good. And I'm starting to get there. Like this is a really deep show, like especially for something like a Star Wars project. And just as a general concept, I want to say before I get specifically into Andor, I don't think people give enough credit to how deep Star Wars actually is. Like how nothing is in black and white. Like over the past 50 years of this franchise, and it gets more and more so with every new entry in there. But no, Andor's been a lot of fun. It's been a really interesting concept to get into, like you said, with the back end of the fight. Underneath all the Jedi and Sith stuff. Um, and then episode 8 was more the same. We saw obviously Andor in more trouble than he's been in the entire series. Got an Andy Circus sighting. That was fun.
That
Um,
how did that not get out? I love it. The random
right?
things like Jason Sudeikis being a star trooper and Andy Serkis in Mandalorian, then Andy Serkis popping up here. Like I love that
Right?
stuff. That's so cool.
Yeah, and that is impressive that Andy Circus of all people didn't leak like you said for a Star Wars appearance after he was already Snoke in the sequel trilogy.
I have now. I forgot about that. Holy crap! I totally didn't even realize that was a thing. I was gonna say I have now met someone in the Star Wars universe, but I guess I already had
Oh damn!
because he was
Nice.
Snoke. I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah. Also, Sam Witwer has voiced one of the troopers that arrested Cassian, I believe.
I
Yeah,
need
I think
more
so.
Sam Witwer in Marvel, Star Wars, DC, anything. Make him live
Agreed.
action. Maul.
I'm
Oh my
man,
goodness, I love Sam
I'm
Witwer.
still mad. We got Black Panther coming out in a couple of weeks. I am still mad that they killed off Claw. That's probably my biggest gripe with Black Panther is that they killed him off.
Very
Well,
fair. Very fair.
hopefully things will turn around for you in a couple weeks and you can be softened of that.
No, I'm excited for Black Panther too. It's gonna be a good one.
Oh yeah.
So for me, I don't think this was a bad episode by any means. I think it was a good episode, but it was my least enjoyable one to watch. I kind of
Okay.
feel like it was the least amount going on. We'll dive full spoilers now going into it. And so this it almost had the most going on and the least going on at one time. I kind of feel like for the Empire overarching, they had the most going on. But for our main protagonists, it was kind of just this is where they're at now. This is what they're dealing with. And so it was cool to finally get the Saw Gerrera aspect in the show like we were expecting. It was especially nice after we had just talked on our last episode about him specifically and learning about Luthen's political views and rebellion views and how he is a bit more on the side of extremism, and it was we still see here
Hmm.
not as extremist as Saw Gerrera based on Saw sees things one way and he's not willing to collaborate, whereas Luthen is willing to adjust his means to get the end that he wants.
Yeah.
Rich, what do you think about this episode specifically? For me, this was one of my least enjoyable ones, but I also found it important, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely get you. I actually enjoyed this one more than I have like in a couple of weeks, but I do see where you're coming from in terms of like not getting as much on the Andor front. But no, it was really this one made you think a lot about like the whole dichotomy of the Star Wars universe and how the system works in there, how that with the Empire versus the Rebellion. I mean, and seeing the dynamic between Saw and Luthen, and we haven't seen Saw in a while since like Clone Wars, Bad Batch, and Rogue One days. But his appearance reminded you of how I guess extreme his viewpoint is compared to a lot of other Star Wars characters, and it really makes you think about where everybody stands and where everybody falls in this whole overarching battle for right, wrong, everything.
That was very, very well said. Great point brought up in chat by AF here was it was incredibly interesting to see how they use slave labor to build the Death Star. Like
Yeah.
how all of this stuff is coming together, how they use the pieces, how that's all getting built. And and Garrett, this is something that we talked about earlier, and so I'll throw it to you for this. But we kind of see the full extent of the Empire's fascism with how quick Cassian gets thrown in jail, no sentence, and now he's out here doing slave labor for the Empire.
And
It's
they
also kind of
literally have a sentencing to like different slave labor camps. It was
exactly.
as on the nose as it could possibly be, and I think the timing of this episode is fucking important. Um,
Yeah.
very
It
important.
is for one reason that I want to touch on. Then I'll throw it to you for the other reasons as well. But like, it's a pretty big call out to me to with how clear it is that the Empire is a evil fascist regime, the clear bad guy antagonists,
Mhm.
with them using prison labor to build all their stuff, with how prevalent that exists in North America and I mean the world, but like specifically with privatized prison systems in the States. It happens here in Canada too, even though they're not private prisons. But when your privates are for profit organizations, essentially, you're going to see a lot of people get thrown in there for the purpose of them keeping it full. And we kind of see that happening here exactly in this episode as well. And so that's why I kind of want to outline, even though I didn't enjoy watching it as much, it was still a great and important episode. Kara, what did you think?
Big part of the story.
Yeah, it's no secret that the Empire has kind of always been modeled after Nazi Germany, and I think this episode gives us a much deeper insight than we've ever had before, and it happens to be happening at a time where there is anti-Semitism burning through the world because of people flagrantly saying things incorrectly and stoking fires that should never be stoked. And I'm not going to say names because I don't want to give more light to this than it deserves. But it's coincidental that this is the week that this episode comes out. And I think it's really important. And I hope that if you've watched this episode and you didn't notice these similarities, I hope that you can listen to something like this and go back and watch with a new lens, or go watch a new Rockstar's video, which I am aware points it out as well. Go do some research and figure out why anti-Semitism is an unacceptable thing, same as racism, same as homophobia, same as all of that. Um, and so I'm glad that this episode comes out this week. It's a hard episode to stomach, in more ways than one. And Rich, I'm happy to have you on for this episode because it wasn't always supposed to be that way. We had another guest and they had to back out, unfortunately, last minute. And so it ended up being just fate all around that we were able to have you on. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know it's been a rough time. I mean, like for me, I've just noticed more and more that anti-Semitism is just unfortunately kind of a regular part of life. I mean, I've been incredibly lucky, and like I know we got Evan in the chat, a fellow Jewish person out there, but I've been lucky enough to just see it from afar, but you still see a ton of it. I see examples probably 3-4 times a week of anti-Semitism, and being, like I said, one of the big Jewish guys in this industry. It's disheartening. It's tough to see, but all we can do is try to support each other the best we can. I mean, obviously stuff like what we saw in episode 8, helps shine a light on it. Kind of put it in perspective for everybody, and you just gotta combat the bad with the good, and like I said, just try to support people as much as we can through some hard shit. But I do appreciate it, and I've been been talking with a few of my Jewish friends this week, and on Twitter and in my personal life and everything. it's definitely big. But we got a good support group, and especially with people outside the community, everybody in the comic book movie world, the pop culture world, and everything. It's been good support system.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. And it is true that the anti-Semitism runs deep in the world. I'm gonna say one more thing, and then I want to get off the topic because it's enough negativity. But I think
enough
it's our due diligence to try to teach this lesson. But an example of this, as some of you know, my partner Nina used to work at Disneyland. She actually helped build the new Rise of the Resistance, not actually like construct, but she was on the grounds for that the new Rise of the Resistance ride from the ground up, the duration of construction through to when she eventually quits. And one of the events that happened that made her quit was she had two costumes. On some days she would be a resistance member, and some days she would be a member of the First Order. We all know what the First Order costumes look like. They look very similar to the Imperial costumes that we see in Andor. And some guests at Disneyland piled Hitler at her. A small little Asian girl just trying to do her job at Rise of the Resistance.
Wow.
And she brought it up to her manager. She tried to get the kids to like not ride the ride. I don't even remember how exactly it went. I don't want to speak things that didn't happen, but she didn't really get the support from her managers that she needed. It happened again to another person, and so systems weren't in place to kind of stop this. And that just goes to show that this runs deep in real life. And so I'm glad for an episode of Star Wars to so directly address this. So people like that who think they're making a funny joke because they know that the Empire is modeled off the Nazis. It's not a funny joke. It was never a funny joke. And it's these things are here to teach us to move away from this in the future and to not repeat history. So that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's just talk about something exciting, like another cameo that was in the episode. TJ, I'm going to throw it to you.
So, like before that, I want to kind of just touch on how interesting it is that obviously we've seen how many bigots and trolls call out stupid things like the Reva casting in Obi-Wan Kenobi, that of course our amazing Brandon Moore wrote about in his Racism and Fandom exploration up on agentsoffandom.com. But I think it's so interesting how many people will be like, "Ugh, black woman in Star Wars with a lightsaber, no!" And then just completely miss the point of shows like Andor and shows like The Boys that are so blatantly calling out those behaviors and these oppressive systems, and it just goes over people's heads. It kind of is a testament to faulty chains within the education system, um, that people can only see and complain about something as small like a different colored person on a screen, but then they miss the blatant plot points that are calling out their behaviors in these exact same shows that they're watching. And in regards to the rebellion, Damon brought up a great point in chat as well, that what this episode also did for us with Cassian in jail is show what's so wrong with Saw Gerrera's methods, show what's wrong with Luthen's methods, and show how it's directly impacting the people that they're supposed to be fighting for.
Yeah,
Somebody else got to go. That's all I had.
I had to take the second to unmute the mic. But yeah, I that was one of my favorite parts of the episode to me, because we know that those of us who have watched the Clone Wars, those of us who have watched Rebels or even Rogue One, you know how Saw Gerrera operates. So we know the eventuality to this story, but I was still on the edge of my seat hearing the argument between them, because both of them were making pretty compelling arguments. And I was thinking to myself, like, shit, if I was on either side of this, I would have lost like 7 sentences ago. So it speaks to, it speaks to the volumes of the characters, the depths of their characters, and the weight that they have behind this cause for both of them. And Luthen is trying to get Saw to realize that, yes, you have differences with these separatists, with these cultists, with these however many things that he mentioned, and it was a lot, and they didn't all mean something to me. But sometimes your enemy is your friend, and you gotta kind of just gotta suck it up for the greater good. And so that was a really compelling conversation for me.
And I think something about that I found very interesting too was how important that conversation was from a societal standpoint as well. When you have a goal you're trying to achieve, with Saw Gerrera's mindset, it's super similar to so many people online that you'll find, even if they have the best cause, the best intentions, when you go with the mindset of, no, that person thinks this, that person thinks that, screw them, they're a terrible person because they do this, they're wrong, they think that, and it's just so separate, and different and exclusive, that you kind of forget that you all want the same thing at the end of the day, but because you
can't put aside that
go
personal
about it the same way, you can't put aside that personal difference. And I think it kind of mirrors cancel culture in a sense, where the positive, like, what people for, like, if you want to view cancel culture as a negative thing, where people get it wrong is they think if they do something terrible they shouldn't have consequences, and if they do have consequences they're trying to be canceled. No, that's not what it is. If you do something dumb, you should have consequences. That's how the world works. Where it comes in negatively is that same thing of people going, oh no, they like this, they're done. This person said this 12 years ago that even it wasn't terrible, but I disagree with, so they're off of my list as people that I like. It's people that are so closed minded that they aren't willing to hear the stories of others in order to realize that, oh wow, we have a lot more similarities than we do differences. And the way that Saw goes about things really just leaves a lot of pain in its trail. And even if the fight is noble, even if the cause is noble, when the methods aren't, it makes you not much different and not much better than the people you are trying to fight. We've talked a lot about how these episodes have kind of the series so far has kind of had 3 episode arcs. The first episode is us learning about where Andor is and introducing Luthen and getting to find out about his situation in his past. The second one is, of course, the heist, them trying to pull the job off and us learning everything about it. And then in the third, we see Andor try and leave. He gets thrown in jail. He tries to escape it all. And as he attempts to escape it all, he ends up in a worse situation than he ever has been. Rich, how do you see this arc concluding? And is there anything you're kind of hoping for out of this last quarter of Andor here?
I mean, like, it's hard to say. I mean, like, keeping up with it the whole time. And it's also really interesting, too, because this is the first time we've gotten a series that's this long, actually, from Marvel, Star Wars, anything on Disney Plus. We've never had, a 12-episode series thus far. And so there's probably, one more episode of this arc, probably, which is going to have Andor getting out of this, working situation that he's in with Andy Serkis and everything. But I'm just really curious to see, because there's also the other thing to think about too is that they have like a 5-year plan or a 5-season plan, I guess, for this. They had one that I think it's gone down to 3. So, and it all plays out before Rogue One. So there's a certain path that Andor has to go on before we get to see him in Rogue One. And we know how his story ends, obviously, but I'm just curious to see like what kind of struggles he has to go against, and like, because we know like you said earlier, there's a lot that we actually know about what happens after this story ends, because this all leads up to Rogue One. We know what happens after Rogue One and everything, but there's still going to be some big overarching villain that we have to get to before the end of this season. We've got season 2 already in development. So no, I'm really curious to see where this ends up over the last 4 episodes, because it's gonna be a crazy ride at the end.
I am not that hopeful. My thought process is this: we know that he's been involved. He was involved with the Aldani heist, but he was not. He's not sold on the idea of rebellion. He's just there for the money and to get out. But we know at some point he is sold on the idea of the rebellion, and he does dedicate his focus to that. And the team who pulled off the heist on Aldani, they all had motivations and reasons for why they are down this far the rabbit hole. And it basically all had to do with their family dying or someone being taken or something like that. While to me, the most interesting parts of the episode happened on Coruscant and in the jail. Some very important things happened on Ferrix as well, and I think we're getting set up for Andor to take some pretty harsh losses, which kind of force him to extremize. I don't know how to phrase that. To get more
I feel
extreme.
like in his case, it's honestly more so inspired.
Yeah,
Like really
yeah.
just getting inspired to, with
Yeah.
great power comes great responsibility. Fucking do something. You're really talented, you asshole.
And
Like,
he has
honestly, that's
yeah.
what it comes down to.
Exactly. But I think that we're setting up for some loss in this next episode, and for him to finally either live out his sentence or escape. I assume he's going to escape because that's a pretty long sentence. And only to escape and just be probably more lost than he was when he was in the prison, and that's probably going to force him back into the hands of Luthen, who we know is looking for him. And we're gonna conclude that way. It's how I would assume. And then, like Damon has been saying in the chat, like you said, Rich, we know that there is a season 2 at least in play. So who knows how we might end? Could be we're waiting on some answers for a while.
Yeah.
I actually have an idea as to a player I think may get added at the end of this season. That it's a guess, it's a theory for a little cameo we'll get at the end. That obviously the Rebels fans in us would love to see a Hera appearance, something like that at the end here. But the thing I actually think that is the most likely to see as some kind of stinger at the end would be the based on the amount of time we've spent within the Empire in this show. That's really what has surprised me is we've spent a lot of time within the Empire hearing their systems, learning where their strategies are flawed. I think this is going to be the show that introduces Admiral Thrawn in live action.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. Hell yes.
I think this is we've spent so much time learning the systems of the Empire without really seeing any of their big players. They've been name dropped, but we haven't really seen them.
The guy who I'm forgetting his Wolf something, who is leads the ISB, I believe, is a character who has shown up in Rebels, who works in conjunction with Thrawn. Thrawn is active in the Empire right now, doing his stuff. So I have been thinking this, TJ. I'm glad you said that. It makes perfect sense for us to get an introduction to him before we get him full throttle in the Ahsoka show, because you can't imagine they're assuming that everyone has seen Rebels or has read the trilogies of books, which are fantastic. But this is one of the most layered characters in all of Star Wars, one of the greatest villains of all time in my eyes. Just such a menacing figure. I hope you're right. Oh man, I hope you're right.
Yeah.
By far, the scariest villain in Star Wars, in my opinion, because
Mhm.
Palpatine, you can connect his dots. You can use his darkness against him. Vader is emotional. He's terrifying, but he is emotional, whereas Thrawn is calculated, and that to me is more terrifying than anything else. Is a calculated villain. And I think this would make sense for us to see him here, just like you said, Garrett, before Ahsoka. We can assume everyone will have seen Rebels. So whether it's Thrawn or any of the other Rebels that potentially get introduced here in advance of Ahsoka, to me, Thrawn is the one that makes the most sense.
Something that I love about Thrawn, and what I think makes him such a compelling villain in the Rebels series, is that he should catch them every time, and he
Oh
would
yeah.
catch them every time. But someone in the Empire fucks up every time, and that's how we get 4 seasons of Rebels. That's how they escape time and time again, because somebody leaves the blockade. Somebody does, it's never
Stupid.
something so stupid where he's like, do this, and they're like, actually, I know better, and then they do the opposite, and well, Thrawn is right, and we see time and time again that Thrawn is going to be right, and it's so terrifying, and so I can't wait to see that in live action. Fuck,
I agree. It's
it's got me
exciting.
hyped.
Yeah, I'm so ready for Thrawn in live action. Like, I mean, he was definitely one of my favorite parts of Rebels. Like, I only got caught up on Clone Wars and Rebels like in the last couple of years or so. I'm so glad I did before all the live action stuff comes out. And like after Star Wars Celebration, like we know we're getting Hera and Ezra Bridger and everything in Ahsoka. But I mean, how cool would it be to have them set up here? A few months before Ahsoka comes out.
Very cool, shocking, and I think a very smart play for us to get hopefully a slight taste of his brutality in the end, and then on to his more harsher tactics in Ahsoka.
Oh yeah,
Exactly.
He better play a big role in the live action stuff. I mean, I hope he sticks around for a while. Not like the whole I think I wrote an article today on the whole Cad Bane thing. Like we know he's coming back, but I hope they don't like kill him off after one episode or something, or kill him off.
Uh, don't,
We can't.
Don't.
You can't do
They
that
better
to
not.
don't,
Garrett's
don't,
guy.
don't even,
Bad game.
don't even. Let's not bring that up. I love Cad Bane. Shout out Cad Bane. What a great character of the Clone Wars.